This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the latest edition of Tiger Talk with Chirco and Company, episode number 59, that is. I am your host, Vito Jerome Chirco, alongside the Doc, my sidekick, and partner in crime, that is the Doc, from Doc and Jock, John Macaroon. John, what's going on today?
Vito, Monday's game was a tough scene. I was very surprised, actually, that coming off of the series loss versus Kansas City, that the Tigers fans spoke out a little bit, knowing that Buck Farmer was going to go up against Corey Kluber, that the fans kind of spoke, and they didn't show up for Monday's game. The scene 15 minutes before the start of Monday's game in the series was really eye-opening, really telling that the fans have jumped off the bandwagon, and to see Cleveland celebrate at Comerica Park was really tough to see, knowing that they haven't won it in a significant period of time, the dominance that the Tigers displayed. But this very podcast, I do believe there is one more week of baseball, 6 games. As we record this, the Tigers are 2 games out of the wild card. But if the Tigers can, with 6 games left, if they can win a significant bunch of games, you have a scenario in which you may back in to the wild card, because the Baltimore is facing Toronto. And then you go, well, okay, then after the series versus Cleveland, Detroit plays Atlanta. But this is all predicated, Vito, on the Tigers winning. And a lot of people don't really have that faith. It can be done, but I'm starting to sense that the fans realize, you know what, even if they get to the wild card, so what? This is something where, this team doesn't look like a team that you really can rally behind because of the mistakes, and nobody wants to get dominated in a postseason matchup versus Boston, or if you play Cleveland again. We just kind of all sense that, hey, we're just kind of a middle-of-the-run team, and nobody likes it around here.
Aren't the fans right now, Doc, saying screw it? And I think they showed it by not showing up Monday night to see the Tigers get beaten by Corey Kluber and the Indians.
What's your reaction to that?
Is that they've already given up. They gave up before the season already was officially over. It's not officially over. They have 6 more games to go, but 2 games back with 6 games to go in the season. Tigers are highly unlikely to make the playoffs now via that wild card route. And at this point, the Indians have just beaten the heck out of the Tigers all year long. And that's been the theme of the season, right? It's been their major downfall all year long for the Tigers, not being able to beat the Indians consistently enough. And how about the KC Royals even? 2-14 against the Indians this year. I think they're going to end up finishing 3-16 against the Indians on the season. And against the KC Royals, not that much better. Now, they have 7 wins, but 12 losses against the Royals that they finished with on the season, losing 2 out of 3 over the weekend against KC at home in a big-time series. Another big-time series now with the Indians, and they didn't look much better. Monday night when they got to Kluber, they scored all those runs. They scored enough runs to win the ball game on Monday night against the Indians. They got to Kluber well enough, but things just didn't come to fruition. Buck Farmer had a start. I believe went 5, though, but allowed multiple runs. I believe 4 earned runs on his part through those 5 innings pitched against the Indians Monday, and the Tigers lost 7-4. So they scored really, enough in a game started by Corey Kluber to win a game against the Indians to get that first big win of the series that could have allowed the Tigers to have some more confidence, some more energy going into the rest of the games in this series, the other 3 games to finish out the season series against the Tribe. And as I said right now, I see the Tigers only winning 1 game in this series against the Indians and finishing 3-16 on the 2016 campaign against the Tribe, who clinched it too Monday at Comerica, making it all that much worse, Doc.
But if you look at the pitching matchups, you got on Tuesday Verlander, Wednesday Fulmer. I do believe that there is an edge there where I think the best case scenario is you get a split out of this series. But I think right now Tuesday's game is a must win. But the pitching matchups kind of favor the Detroit Tigers these next couple games. So I would pump the brakes a little bit on what you're thinking of the Tigers going 3-13. I do believe they're going to win 1, maybe 2 in the series versus the Indians. Because the pitching matchups dictate that. And, do you see potentially what JD is hoping for? And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the podcast. But when he was interviewed following Monday's game, he came out and said, listen, they partied, they celebrated it up. The Indians were probably drinking till the early morning, celebrating their first division win in a significant period of time. And he said that, well, maybe they'll come in with a little bit less fire. But I'm thinking that if you got a guy like Rajai Davis over there playing with Cleveland, he's not going to want to kind of let up. He's going to want to stick it to the Detroit Tigers. And I think it makes it more sweet for them knowing that they got to celebrate in Detroit at Comerica Park. So I don't see them letting up. They got a decent team, but I don't think that, potentially that the Tigers are going to lose. I don't see them getting swept. That would be complete and utter disaster.
Well, I said they would win 1 game, and you said 3-13. You meant 3-16 then against the Indians on the season. So, and that's what I see happening. I think it's inevitable. I think Verlander can win his start Tuesday against a rookie and Mike Clevenger of the Indians, who they're throwing out there, who is not a guy they really want pitching in the postseason, and really maybe even at this point. So Tigers, I think, have the big advantage Tuesday. But after that, even with Fulmer on the mound, even with Daniel Norris on the mound on Thursday, and what will be now the season finale against the Tribe, you know what? I still like the Indians in those 2 matchups, head-to-head with the Tigers, even though you have Fulmer. Fulmer did great his last time out, really rebounded, had a great outing against the Royals, looked terrific Friday night, and the only win against the Royals in this past series with the Royals. But now, you know what? He's kind of due for a letdown start. And isn't it right now, the time of the season where you have the letdowns, when the season's kind of over for your club? You don't want to give up total hope in the season and in your playoff odds, but with them diminishing, Fulmer's kind of due for that letdown start. Not that he's going to be defeated by what happened last night and seeing the Indians celebrate. He might be more motivated to get it done against the Tribe on Wednesday. And then Thursday, Daniel Norris is kind of due at this point in his season, after being banged up for a lot of the year, he's kind of due for a letdown here against the Tribe as well. So I'm just saying, these guys have done great all year long, but at this portion of the season, when the Indians have seen you repeatedly all these times throughout the season, I think the Indians have the advantage because they are young starting pitchers. And that's why I see them winning 2 of the next 3 against the Tigers.
Okay, but if the Tigers can walk away from the series versus Cleveland 1 game back in the wild card, it'll make it very interesting going down to Atlanta. Now, this is all predicated on the Tigers winning out. And I know everybody out there that's listening and everybody that's kind of paying attention to the Tigers is saying, listen, the Tigers have to win, and there's no guarantee you're going to go and play Atlanta. A lot of people are believing that they're going to get swept by Atlanta. So, a lot of people are disappointed right now with the team, and the lack of support right now that's been shown is really kind of eye-opening in that, is it that people believe that the window's closed? Is it that, a media member in Lynn Henning wrote an article that basically laid out that at the time that he wrote it, that Al Avila's kind of thinking that Brad Ausmus is a hot commodity as a manager, and that if he gets that, one of the reasons why they want to bring him back is that if he's let go, he might find, a wealth of suitors outside of the Detroit Tigers. When I read that article, I was just like, sometimes, maybe a new situation might help all parties involved, but the Tigers don't want to be the organization where you groomed a manager and he goes on to be really successful. But in Detroit, how much do you say, well, he gets a pass because of the injuries? They're still above 500. But when you look at the total picture, Vito, I think the fans and everybody involved that's watching the Tigers are kind of looking at the puzzle going, Brad Ausmus isn't the guy. The fans and maybe some of the media don't support Brad Ausmus being the head guy, and it's kind of tough in that it's kind of affecting attendance. It might be affecting some of the attitudes, when fans go to games. Miguel Cabrera commented on maybe the impact that some of the fans are having on the Tigers, but in the end, I'm hoping that, seeing Cleveland celebrate in Detroit, knowing what that represented, knowing that the Tigers had an advantage in the Central for so long, really's got to kick them in the ass, and they got to get in gear. This is it. This is playoff time. They got to win. And do they have enough? Maybe if Nick Castellanos comes back, maybe just his presence may alone help give this team a spark. But what is it going to take, Vito? What's it going to take for this team to rally and get their ass in gear? Because that loss to KC, that series loss to KC cannot happen. That should never have happened. One strike away.
It was devastating. right? It can't happen, and it's so inexcusable. But the thing is, after Saturday's poor loss against the Royals, when they came back, they won the game. K-Rod blew the save, and it was an epic comeback, an epic loss, too, suffered by the Tigers at this juncture in the season, a loss they couldn't afford to have suffered, and then to come back on Sunday and lose again when Matt Boyd failed to record an out. Think about that. From my knowledge, that's what he did on Sunday. That's how poor he pitched in Sunday's game against the Royals in the season finale against them, a team that hasn't been as good as last year, the year before, and you lose 2 out of 3 against them at your home ballpark, and in that fashion, losing in a game where they were up on Saturday, then Sunday where Matt Boyd gets just blown up, and the Tigers get blown out almost. Well, they allowed a lot of runs, allowing 12 runs in that game, losing 12-9, and they scored all those runs. They could have won, should have won Saturday, but also Sunday. And for me, that's why Sunday was more of the devastating loss that cost the Tigers their chances at reaching the postseason. And if that didn't defeat their chances of reaching the playoffs, Monday's loss to the Tribe did. When they got to Kluber, they had their chances to really open up the ballgame and score more runs off of Kluber. But did they? No. And a good team would have won that game on Sunday when you had your offense score 9 runs. And they would have won that game on Monday when they scored as many as they did off of Kluber, getting to him. And in my opinion, when you score 4 runs as a good ball club or so-called good ball club, you should win games. And these must-win games, you can't afford to lose when you score that many runs. And that's why the loss against the Royals was horrible, was very horrible. But, and I'm talking about Saturday specifically, but Sunday's loss and then Monday's loss are the losses that truly defeated the Tigers' chances of reaching the playoffs. And for me as a fan, as trying to be an unbiased fan of the Tigers too, Monday's loss was the last straw. Because I've remained, you know this, I've remained the eternal optimist. You know that with me. That's how big of a Tigers fan I am, how much I really have invested in the Tigers season, because I think their club is good enough to fight for a playoff spot. And not only that, but to reach the playoffs. But at this point, when you lose 3 in a row at this juncture in the season, and 2 out of 3 against a club you shouldn't be losing 2 out of 3 against at home, and then you repeat that by losing another game to start off a series with this team that's beaten you up all year long, who you struggled with having confidence against, those are losses you can't afford to have, and the reasons why the Tigers are done at this point, honestly.
So you're thinking they're done. You don't have any hope that maybe they'll back in, maybe they'll earn a spot, to be in a 1-game playoff to get to the wild card playoff game? You're just thinking that there is no chance that this Tigers team can rally. They just don't have enough. They don't have what it takes as a team collectively. Starters, bullpen, offense, defense. It's just really tough right now to have that confidence. But you do realize that some of the teams above them are battling each other.
They are, and that's a big thing to point out. The Orioles and Blue Jays are going at it, which is a crucial series that could lead to the Tigers having a chance again in this wild card race. And really the only chance still the Tigers have now is winning the next 3 games. So pretty much sweeping the Indians. If you break it down to a 3-game set, that's all they have is 3 more games. If you sweep those 3 games with the Indians now to finish off their season series with the Tribe, well, then you got a chance maybe once again. But you also kind of need one of 2 to happen. The Orioles to sweep the Blue Jays or the Jays to sweep the Orioles. And more likely is that you need to help out the Tigers for their sake is for the Orioles to sweep or the Blue Jays to defeat the Orioles in all 3 games. That's kind of the way that you're going to have to, or that the Tigers are going to make the playoffs at this point. That's going to have to happen for the Tigers, I think, to still have a shot. So winning the next 3 against the Indians, but also that happening where the Jays just blow out or just defeat the Orioles in all these upcoming games against the O's. Because the O's are the team that the Tigers trail right now by 2 games, but you have the Mariners right now tied up with the Tigers too. So even, you think of it this way, the Tigers don't take care of business in the next 3 against the Tribe, meaning win all 3. Even if Toronto beats the O's in these games against the Orioles they have head-to-head, it's not going to help out the Tigers, but then it will help out the Mariners. The Mariners maybe have the chance to get in. They will catapult the Tigers. And right now, it's more and more likely because of how the Tigers have played in the last 3 games and all year long against the Tribe. It's why you can't optimistically, I think, view the Tigers as winning the next 3 against the Tribe after being 2-14 against them going into Tuesday.
Now, we got a couple messages to our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. I really enjoy, interacting with the fans. And, I know that our Twitter page is one of the most interactive. So I threw it out there wondering that if Brad Ausmus was retained, what would the reaction be? A couple messages get in here. Fire Ausmus gets in. I won't even be a Tigers fan if Osmus is back next year. And Kenny Sledge, a guy that's followed us really early on, is a guy that really messages us during each games and really is interactive with us. He writes in, I'd be more pissed if McCann is still the full-time catcher. And we can speak on that for a second because a lot of people are wondering, you know what? Saltalamacchia bought himself a couple weeks of good favor because of the home runs and the clutch plays, but his batting average has been terrible. And James McCann in recent games has come up in some important moments, and he's failed to bring runners in. He's failed to, drive runs in. Unfortunately, the news that he made was involved with Rod Allen and his second deck comment when he hit that massive home run. But up and down, inconsistency has plagued James McCann, and his numbers need to improve. He's gotten incrementally better, and he's a really great catcher. Defensively, he's a guy that has a great arm, gets a lot of guys out. He throws a lot of base runners out, and he calls a great game. But in terms of his offensive production, his numbers aren't that good. So are you concerned at all about the catcher position for the Tigers right now? Because, you could have upgraded, in getting Jonathan Lucroy, but you didn't go out and you didn't pull the trigger because Salty was, mashing the hell out of the baseball. And now you're kind of hitching your wagon to James McCann. Do you feel like that's the right play?
Well, honestly, at this point, Saltalamacchia is hitting below 200. Alex Avila has been banged up for a lot of the season. He's their guy that was the backup last season when McCann was a great rookie, standout rookie with the bat even. And he's still McCann and throwing out runners at a premium rate. Salty can't do that, really can't hit consistently, can't hit for average at all. He's proven that all year long. So you can't get on base, can hit for power here and there, had some clutch home run shots this season that saved the Tigers in a few games. But outside of those few home runs that were clutch home runs, what has Salty done for the Tigers this year? Not much. Can't add any defensive value. Really can't throw out runners, right? He's really erratic with that. McCann's not, but as a veteran backup, you kind of want a guy that can be a good defensive guy as well and hit a little bit better, hit above 200 at least, right? To kind of allow McCann to relax, right? McCann can't now because Salty's not hitting, and McCann has more pressure on him then as a youngster to continue hitting when this season really has been a lost year for McCann. Outside of a few clutch hits out of him, right? McCann's had a few clutch hits in his defense and can throw out runners at a premium rate, one of the best at throwing out runners in all of Major League Baseball from the catcher position. But would you rather right now have Alex Avila, who's very similar to McCann and being able to throw out runners, being a good game caller, game manager? Would you rather have him than Jared Saltalamacchia, who is really reserved to hitting the long ball? And if he's not doing that, he's not productive whatsoever. And when you look at wins above replacement, I think that will prove to you as well why Avila this season has been much more valuable to the White Sox, even in limited amount of games because of injury. And Salty's WAR, to sum all that up, to prove my point here, Doc, fully, his WAR this season for the Tigers, negative .2. In 91 games played according to Baseball Reference. Now, Alex Avila, now you're probably wondering, what is his WAR? Well, it is better. Now, it's not a ton, but it's 1.1 according to Baseball Reference, and only 54 games played with the White Sox. So it has been an injury-ridden season for Alex Avila on the south side of Chicago with the White Sox. But for what he's making, not a ton of money, would you rather have him than Jared Saltalamacchia, Doc? Because you know what? That's actually one of the mistakes. Not a huge mistake, but one of the mistakes that Alex Avila's dad, did make this past offseason was not choosing to resign Alex Avila, his son. One of his mistakes from this past offseason, not a huge mistake, but you have to really look at it and call it as it is now, which is a mistake by Al Avila in not retaining his son when he could have, instead of going out and getting Jared Saltalamacchia. Doc, your take on that matter. Did he make a mistake in not resigning his own son?
Obviously, you see it now. Al Avila was, a new general manager, and one of the early decisions that he had to make was, hey, signing or not to resign, Alex Avila. And you go, well, maybe it was something where he kind of had some inside information regarding maybe Alex didn't want to stay here anymore.
Inside info as in talking to his own son, maybe.
Exactly.
He say, hey, son, how you doing? Do you want to really stay here? And maybe he thought he was more injury prone. But in his defense, he's been injury-prone this year, so we've known about the concussion symptoms, right, that have bothered Alex Avila for how long now in his Major League career. So he knew that, too, remember.
So Alex is a backup now?
He's a backup in Chi-Town with the White Sox. He's done more in terms of WAR, which is a huge stat. You know that now, Doc. 1.1 WAR, not a huge amount of it. But as a backup, that's a quality amount of WAR produced by a guy that's only played 54 games with the White Sox this year. So it has been injury-ridden for him on the south side of Chicago. But still, he's a great veteran leader and more that all-around defensive-minded catcher, too, than Jared Saltalamacchia, who really can't throw out runners, like I said. He is reserved for hitting home runs, right? And luckily, he's hit a few clutch bombs. What if he didn't do that this year for the Tigers? Think about his value. If it wasn't for that out of Salty this season, his value would be automatically zero. It would be, as his WAR shows, it would be negative something. And his WAR, it really backs it up that he's produced little to nothing with the Tigers this season, even though we've had those clutch bombs out of him. So I think to sum it up, the synopsis of all this is that Alex Avila has had a better campaign than Jared Saltalamacchia, and Avila, his dad, made a mistake. Maybe not a major one, but a mistake in not choosing to resign his own son this past offseason, Doc.
Yeah, key mistake. And now you look at, are you comfortable with James McCann and what he's done? And let's say he produces similar numbers next year. Is he on the hot seat? Is it time to maybe look for a backup or look for, his catcher, an area of need now going forward in 2017?
He gets one more year to ride it out as a starter because their other bats in their lineup are good enough, I think, to kind of cover up his deficiencies as a major league hitter. But next year, if he really struggles to the point where he's only hitting 220, 225, really 240 or below, I would say he might be on the way out of Motown. Because he has to hit, I think, for me, Doc, at least around 250 consistently, all year long in 2017. If he doesn't do that, so meaning doesn't show more proneness to being able to hit consistently, to get on base more consistently as a starting catcher, well, then you got to start looking elsewhere for your starting catcher, Doc, to say the least. And, there's been some other issues, though, with the Tigers and with, as you brought up, skipper Brad Ausmus. And one of the major issues for me, once again, goes back to the fact he hasn't played Steven Moya since calling him up when rosters expanded to 40 men on September 1st. He has played 3 games only, 3 at-bats. That's all he's gotten. So he hasn't started a game. He has come in to pinch hit on September 10th, the 16th, and the 23rd against the Royals. And, okay, he hasn't gotten a hit in any of those at-bats, but only 3 at-bats since you called him up? And then you have the audacity to say that you're going to keep going with the guys that have gotten you here. Well, what is here? Those guys haven't gotten us anywhere to any significant point this season. Tigers aren't in the playoffs. So why don't you try something else? Mix it up a little bit and let Moya hit, who, as we talked about on a previous podcast, had at that point in time at least an 803 OPS. And Casey McGee's OPS was below 600? It's been horrible. It's been minor league-esque. So you don't have any room for that guy getting ABs, but you allow him to get ABs to pinch hit for guys, and then you leave Steven Moya on the bench? So once again, that's another issue, red flag with Brad Ausmus, his mismanaging of the Tigers, of their everyday lineup, and failure to adjust in-game to allow his team to be in better position to win a game at the end of a game. So he's failed to consistently do that as Tiger skipper all year long in his 3rd year on the job. And you're still going to have the goal as Avila to give him a 4th year as Tiger skipper next year? I don't get that whatsoever. And if anything is proving to you now that he shouldn't be the manager, it will be that the Tigers don't get into the playoffs, which is more and more likely by the day with only 6 games to go. And I know you have a relatively favorable and easy schedule after the Indians and only 3 games remaining, an extremely small sample size, but playing the Braves, who have been one of the National League's and Major League Baseball's worst clubs this season as a whole. But, they were playing well. Going into, or as of last week, they had swept the Mets, I believe, the Braves. Matt Kemp is hitting home runs at a premium rate once again. Freddie Freeman is having one of his best campaigns as a major leaguer. And he's, a guy that's made, I think, 2 All-Star games. They have an ace in Julio Teheran, who they are right now slotted to face in their weekend series with the Braves. In the last series ever at Turner Field for the Atlanta Braves. So that will be, to say the least, Doc, a tougher series than expected, as I wrote in my outlook for these matchups for the Tigers this weekend, facing the Tribe for 4 games at Comerica and then 3 in Atlanta at Turner Field.
Man, Vito, that was a lot to digest. So all around, yeah, just a combination of so many different things that's resulting in the Tigers not winning. But, it's been talked about and a lot of fans are starting to feel it, and maybe we're not really just willing to say it just yet, but should this season end in failure, like you're saying, and like a lot of people are projecting, if you end up outside of the postseason, do you see Brad Ausmus being retained? Do you agree with what Lynn Henning said and what is going on with Al Avila and his thinking in that, we've kind of given Brad Ausmus a list of things that he's got to improve upon, and he's done it. And so you've kept things together. I'm looking at it from the organization's standpoint in terms of they're thinking, well, okay, this is a young manager who is slightly progressing, and we're not willing to just, train this guy, have him go because, for whatever reason, the organization feels like if they fire Brad Ausmus or they don't renew his contract, that he's going to go out there and maybe join a team and really take off and flourish as the next big thing manager somewhere else. So as we speak now, do you see Brad Ausmus being the skipper in 2017? And would that be another wasted season if he gets, because obviously you're not going to sign him to a 1-year deal. You're probably going to give him 2 to 3 more years. Are you willing to kind of ride it out with Brad Ausmus and say, okay, we'll retool, we'll regroup. You're going to have, basically a young starting staff with Fulmer, Norris, Boyd, Castellanos, and, the crew returning, and barring significant injuries, you got a team that can maybe compete. Do you want Brad Ausmus leading the troops?
Do you think I'm really willing to allow him to come back as manager of the Tigers in 2017, Doc? Come on. After everything that I just said and spewed out about Brad Ausmus in very much a negative manner regarding Brad Ausmus and his managing ability as Tigers through his first 3 years, is 3 years under contract with the Tigers as their skipper? Come on, man. No way, Jose, do I want him back next year as a Tiger skipper. And no way, Jose, do I believe that he deserves to be back for a 4th year as Tiger skipper. I think he's proven that time and time again, right, as the season has progressed. And, now another issue with him is, the Jordan Zimmerman thing. The Jordan Zimmerman issue. You allow him to pitch out of the bullpen on Sunday in relief, okay? So he did do that. He pitched 3 innings, but allowed 4 hits, an earned run, but then struck out 4. So he had some good stuff, better stuff than when he came back, made that start on a Thursday against who? The White Sox, I believe it was, got rocked. Remember how poor that was? He came back too early. He rushed himself back maybe, or the Tigers did. And you allow him now to pitch out of the pen, and now you put him in consideration to start in the final series against the Braves. At this point in his season, when he's been injury prone, been miserable in the second half, and you really want him to start in a game that could be crucial to the Tigers potentially making the playoffs or not making the playoffs in the final series of the season. How stupid is that, potentially, too? And I know he didn't look horrible out of the pen against the Royals on Sunday. He did look all right, and that was new to him, pitching out of the pen. He hadn't done it since, I think, in a playoff series with the Nationals a few years back. So, but now you expect him after that, not seeing a ton of great stuff out of him and horrible stuff out of him in his most recent outing, the Tigers. You expect him to come into a series with the Braves, who can hit more than you would think, and to start efficiently, to go 5 or 6, and to give the Tigers a chance to win in that last series of the season. That's another reason why you could say Brad Ausmus is so inept in his managing ability. And some of the blame has to fall upon the shoulders of Al Avila and the front office, too, for allowing Brad Ausmus to even have the chance to make that decision in the final games of the 2016 campaign.
Okay, I'm going to tease you a question. We're going to start comparing Brad Ausmus to some of the other managers.
We can do that.
So you have a guest for us on this podcast?
We do, though. A singer who actually dropped a great rendition of Take Me Out to the Ballgame on a previous edition of Tigers Talk, Isis Damil, and she's a great singer, and we will have her on in just a few minutes here after this quick commercial break on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Hey guys, it's Vito Chirco here from Top Cat Sales in lovely downtown Royal Oak, Michigan. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Well, if so, then look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan quarterback John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the very highest quality and the very best service. So get your organization, your school, or your club team all in with Adidas today by going online to TopCatTeamSales.com. And once again, Top Cat Sales' website is TopCatTeamSales.com. And remember to follow Top Cat Sales on Twitter as well at Team Top Cat.
I'm sure he goes up there, maybe rides the bike a little bit just to stay loose.
High, towering drive, left center field. That ball is hit well, and that ball is way back and gone.
Ooh, James, did you?
McCann put a charge into that one, and it went a long way. A 3-run shot for the Tigers.
Second deck.
Number 12 on the year for James McCann. 6-0 Detroit.
And now joining me on episode number 59 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company is Miss Isis Damil. And Isis is a great songwriter, musician, singer, all of the above. She is very musically talented, unlike yours truly. Isis, how's it going?
Hey, it's going good.
Hey, very good to hear from you. It's been a long time. And, Isis and I, we graduated, I believe, in the same year as well from the University of Detroit Mercy, which we used to commonly refer to as UDM. And now we can't,
Yep.
but I'll say Detroit Mercy. We are both Detroit Mercy alums. And, Isis, it's been way too long for you and I here.
Yes, it has.
So, first and foremost, Isis, I wanted to ask you about this Take Me Out to the Ball Game rendition that you delivered to my listeners and I, and it was great. Everybody loved it. My co-host Doc did, definitely. And wanted to ask you, what kind of creative process was involved in creating that rendition of Take Me Out to the Ball Game?
Yeah. So my dad, he's a jazz musician, so we worked together, and it was a very fun process, actually. Just sitting in the studio and just basically singing it over and over again until we figured something that we that we could work with, And it was a fun process, just going over the song and seeing what kind of fun things we could do with it.
Well, it sounded like you guys had a lot of fun because it was I know you're into jazz. It was very jazzy, too, to say the least. And how long did it take for you to put it together completely?
It didn't take long. Once we actually figured out what direction we wanted to go with it, it didn't take long at all. We did it right there in the studio. It was probably a couple of hours, actually.
Well, awesome. Very awesome. I know for me, I can't do that anything close to being quick. Not with that kind of a process for making a song. So, yeah, not me. But huge props to you, Isis. And you are now up for Best Local Artist through the Michigan Chronicles Best in Black Detroit Awards as well. And big props to you for that. And I want to see you win. And wanted to hear from you about what it means to be up for that award as well.
It's an amazing experience because I like to think of myself as the underdog by being a jazz artist. A lot of people, that's not their, top 5 music genre. So to be the underdog and to be nominated for Best Local Artist among these other great artists, because, Detroit obviously has amazing talent, and to be the underdog and be nominated along with all these other great musical talents, it's an honor, honestly.
So how can people tuning into this podcast and myself, my co-host, how can we all vote for you then for this award?
Yeah, www.bestinblackdetroit.com. And then if you click on the Leisure and Entertainment tab, there's a couple of categories, and then you'll see Best Local Artist. And you just click on my name, Isis Damil. And you can vote every day. The last day is September 30th, and you can vote every day up till September 30th.
Very good. So easy enough to do so, and you must do so. Isis deserves it big time from all of you guys listening in today.
Thank you.
And now you also had the privilege of attending the Congressional Black Caucus Conference in Washington, D.C. And how did that opportunity arise for you?
Yeah, I work for the Black Caucus Foundation of Michigan. And we're an organization that does enrichment for the African-American community. And each year they hold an African-American leaders state policy meeting at the White House where we bring concerns that we deal with in the African-American communities. We bring awareness to those to the White House and discuss ways on how we can advance in these communities.
And right now, as you know, Isis, a lot is going on in our nation with race and, racial injustice and divide. And, we're trying to bridge that racial divide now as a nation. And what do you think can be done to help specifically bridge that racial divide that has become increasingly evident within our nation as a whole?
Yeah, well, first, realize that there is a problem and bring that to light. And I think the biggest problem that we have, because I think America as a whole has many issues, but number one is to understand that racism is alive and well. And for people who are not affected by it, I think that they should realize that it's not okay to have people like minorities brush it under the rug just because they're not affected by it. They think minorities should just brush it under the rug, and that's not fair. So just to realize that we have many problems, And so now that when we realize that problem, let's work together and let's figure out how to fix it. But number one, we have to start with actually understanding and realizing and bringing awareness to the fact that we do have a problem with that.
And then all people, right, of all different backgrounds have to be willing to accept that there is a problem and have to be willing to talk about this major issue in our nation today as well.
Yes, definitely.
And now, I mean, we've seen these athletes, professional athletes, even some, college athletes now take a stand against racial injustice and speak out about it. And Colin Kaepernick, how about him not being willing to stand for the national anthem? And what is your stance on that as a musician and as somebody who obviously you do see all this going on as well when you watch television? Anybody does nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good for him for standing firmly for what he believes in. And I think more athletes should be, because they have an obligation, I feel like, because they're so heavily in the media. We see them all the time. We see everything they do. We can know everything about every aspect about their life as far as relationships and breakups and money issues or whatever. But then when it comes to community involvement or even involvement around the whole nation, it's just like there's silence. And I feel like athletes and other celebrities have an obligation to bring awareness to these problems that we have going on and take a stand for it. Take a stand and let people know that we have a problem going on, and I want to bring awareness to the people who may not know.
They have that major platform, definitely. And you see these celebrities, too, these A-listers, B-listers, no matter what kind of lister they are. These guys, these women and men also have the chance to speak out and really take a stand. And some of them that aren't, I would hope, see these guys, these men and women, do that at one point in their lives, as they are in the daily limelight, as you were saying, Isis.
Yeah, exactly. You should, if you have that platform available, you should use that for good, not just for showboating or whatever. Use it for something constructive.
Absolutely. And now, what's the next step that these athletes, that these celebrities can take, you think, to further the discussion about racism in our nation?
I think instead of just talking about it, they could do more community involvement. So, like, all these athletes, these star athletes have gym shoe line, and we go out to China and we have a Chinese shop of underage children who are making these gym shoes for them for less than minimum wage, and then they come back to the United States and they're selling them for hundreds of dollars. We could keep that here. What we could do is we could have a factory here where we're hiring our own people in our own community, creating jobs for people in our community, and then keeping all the money right where it belongs. And I think that's key, is giving back to the community for sure. That's the first step. Keep it in the community.
Okay, and now there's so much you can discuss about that, obviously, and I hope that others with a podcast and other musicians such as yourself are willing to speak about it more often and utilize their platform to the fullest. And for you now in your musical career, what do you believe is the next step for you that you would like to see yourself take?
Hopefully, soon when I get to start touring, that would be awesome. Right now I'm doing little things around the city of Detroit, but definitely to take it on a bigger scale. And because I'm so outspoken, and I would like to bring a lot of things aware to other places. So if I could get a chance to travel outside of the country for singing, definitely letting people aware of what's going on here in America. Not that they can't watch the news, but that's just, of course, the media only shows what they want to show. But definitely touring the world and letting people be aware about everything that's going on. And my music, I think it's spiritual. It's like feel-good music, and I just want to be able to spread a positive vibe out to not just my hometown, but spread it out to anybody who's willing.
And Isis, we see these musicians too actively displaying these kind of things, talking about issues when they tour. For major concert tours, you see these guys, these women as well, take the opportunity when they are in between songs to talk about these issues of racism and other issues going on in our world today. And that's great to see. And as you said, something that you would like to do. And that would be great to hear from you then. If you got that chance to tour one day, and I hope you do get that chance to hear from you and get your voice on all these issues as well, Isis.
Exactly. But for now, I'm at Baker's Keyboard Lounge every Tuesday from 12 noon to 3. And like I told my audience today, I was letting them know because I don't know how many people know the last day to register to vote is October 11th. And so I was just, I never want to push my political views on anyone, but I do think that this election is very important. And I let them know that they should vote. So, if I could get a chance to, use a bigger platform to let more people know, I'm going to let them know. The last day to register to vote is October 11th, so you can vote coming up this election.
Hey, keep doing your thing, Isis, with that, with your music as well. Best of luck to you. And by the way, speaking of voting for Best in Black Detroit Awards ends on September 30th. So get in your vote for Isis for Best Local Artist by September 30th. And thank you, Isis, for all your time today. You have a great one, and we will be in touch again soon.
Thank you. Sounds good. Thanks, Vito.
Yep, you have a good one. And back here on episode 59 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. And that was Isis Damil, who joined us, courtesy of the Top Cat Sales phone line. I know I forgot to plug that in there when she joined us. And she's always has a great message and a great musician, great singer. She's a songwriter, does it all, and especially in the jazz music genre, Doc.
All right, Vito. So I've kind of come up with, on the fly here, a little bit of an interesting debate topic, and one that I know everyone's talking about, Brad Ausmus, whether he's going to return or not. One more person gets in here. Bradley G writes in. He writes on Twitter, "Tonight's game makes 18 on the year for me. I'll probably do 8 to 10 if we keep Ausmus. We will have less wins, obviously." So that's hitting the pocketbooks of the Tigers organization, because if you look at the overall attendance, it's been down the last 4 years. And this year, I believe, compared to 2015, is between 17 and 19% down in attendance. And it's gone steadily down since Brad Ausmus has been at the helm. But an interesting debate topic, because we were talking about Brad Ausmus, and it got me to thinking, Brad Ausmus, ranking-wise, compared to some of the other managers that were futile for the Detroit Tigers, when you look at the rankings, most people will rank Buddy Bell, Alan Trammell, Louis Pujols, and Brad Ausmus is probably, on the bottom end of the managers in Detroit. Now, we've had our share of good managers or bad managers, but in our poll right now, it's exactly even early on. Most fans think that Brad Ausmus and Alan Trammell were probably the two managers that struggled the most in their tenure. So between them, who do you think is a worse manager, Brad Ausmus or Alan Trammell?
Well, remember, not to cut you off. Do you have something else?
I was going to say, you probably bring up the same point. Alan Trammell didn't have a whole heck of a lot of talent.
I was going to say that. That was my point.
But 119 losses. Brad Ausmus is given talent, but he hasn't done nothing much with it. So, and you're just thinking now, throwing it out there, right now it's split right down the middle, 44%, Ausmus versus Alan Trammell. Who was the worst manager?
I'll give Ausmus this much. He was hired on the merits of him being a quality manager, maybe, knowing enough to be a skipper day in, day out. Alan Trammell, remember, was hired more because of the fact that he had a legacy with the Tigers as a player. So I don't think he was really viewed as a high-caliber manager one day with the Tigers or another club, and he'll never be a manager once again. I guess Ausmus has a slim shot at that being the case. Now, I don't think he will or should, get another shot as big league skipper, but he could be a coach somewhere else again. And Trammell was as a bench coach with the D-backs, remember, for Kirk Gibson, now the broadcast for the Tigers. But okay, to answer your question, you kind of get where I'm going to, I think. I got to say Brad Ausmus, as much as it pains me to say it, because I think, Trammell had the great Tigers career, 84 World Series hero, and should have won the regular season MVP in 1987 when the Tigers won the AL East. And so Trim has a legacy, the history with the Tigers that will never be forgotten and never should be forgotten. Brad Ausmus, you could easily erase him from Tigers lore, from the Tigers record books or just history books, because he didn't make any records and won't set any records with the Tigers as manager of the ball club either. But I would have to go with Brad Ausmus because he was hired on the merits of being able to lead a team with talent to a World Series title. Now, as he gotten it done, he's fallen way short. And especially last year and this year, it looks like that will be the same case for Brad Ausmus and the Tigers. But you have to look at the difference in, as I already pinpointed, why Alan Trammell was hired and Brad Ausmus, why he was hired. And that's the reasoning for me for why I believe that Brad Ausmus actually had a better tenure as Tigers skipper. Even though, as we said right away that Alan Trammell had no talent whatsoever. But remember, his team in 03 fell one loss shy of the Major League record for losses in a single season. So he did help the Tigers prevent that from happening. Remember that was a big thing, not to get 120 losses in 2003 when they were despicable. They were a dumpster fire all year long, but they didn't lose that 120th game. So you got to give, I don't know how much kind of credit to Alan Trammell, but a little bit, right, of credit to him and the ball club for not losing 120 when they easily could have. Because I know they had to go on, they had like some sort of a winning streak there at the very end of the season just to avoid losing 120 games. But yeah, to sum it all up, Doc, I think you get my point. Brad Ausmus, by a few hairs, maybe more than a hair, but he gets a nod for me in the debate of who was the better, or who has been, because Ausmus is still the manager. Now, Ausmus, still, obviously, that's all I'm saying about him. That's all the love I can give him for one podcast, and probably for this whole entire season, that he's a better skipper than Alan Trammell ever was.
Now, with the Tigers, Alan Trammell from 2003 to 2005, 187 wins, 302 losses.
Yep.
And included in that was the 43-win season, 43 and 119 in 2003. So, but how do you think Brad Ausmus compares to a manager like a Buddy Bell or Louis Pujols? Was Brad Ausmus the worst of that bunch?
Well, Buddy Bell had experience prior to getting that job. Now, you know what? Actually, I don't think he did. But he came from a coaching background, from a major league kind of tutelage and lineage with his family. The Bells played baseball. So Buddy had that going for him. Brad didn't have that going for him. Buddy Bell was a coach as well in the major leagues before getting that job after Sparky. He was a guy that took over, by the way, for Sparky Anderson, who is how many miles, how much above Brad Ausmus, right? But it's hey, there's no debating that. So you got to just look at it sad, because there's not much else to debate in managers, between Brad Ausmus and Tiger skippers after Sparky Anderson, outside of Jim Leyland. Jim Leyland was the only good guy, really, right? So I think Buddy Bell gets the nod as well over Brad Ausmus. But Luis Pujols, who took over after Phil Gardner, how about Phil Gardner? People forgot about him. He was a quality manager, much better than Brad Ausmus. He managed the Astros, Gardner, when Brad Ausmus, I believe, was an Astro. Remember, he took the Astros to the 2005 World Series, so he won an NL pennant. So he did do something there in Houston as their skipper, Phil Gardner did. And he had experience prior with the Brewers, I believe, when they were a member of the American League. So Gardner did a lot of stuff, not even mentioned because I guess, well, there's no debate there between Gardner and Brad Ausmus. But there is a little bit of a debate there between Brad Ausmus and Buddy Bell. But Buddy Bell, I will give the nod to, because he had more experience, well, as a coach in the majors. And then Luis Pujols, he took over on a temporary basis. He didn't last and didn't have the stamina to last, or the acumen, baseball acumen, to be a major league skipper. So, and they wisely chose not to renew his or not to give him the job on a permanent basis going into the 03 campaign, and that's when Alan Trammell got it. So the only guy, I guess I'm saying that, well, I said he was better than Alan Trammell, right? And then I'll say he was better than Luis Pujols, but that's by default, because Pujols he didn't even manage a full season. So that's not saying much for Brad Ausmus. And even more, saying that he's better than Alan Trammell, is it saying that much either, really? I don't think so.
Okay, so to recap, you're saying that Brad Ausmus is probably the worst manager the Tigers have had?
Well, no, because Trammell and Luis Pujols were actually worse.
Okay.
So let me think about it. So he was actually, I'm saying he was better than Trammell,
okay,
better than Luis Pujols, not better than Phil Gardner, and not better than Buddy Bell.
So of the ranking right now,
yes,
you would voted for Alan Trammell as being the worst manager of the bunch between Buddy Bell, Brad Ausmus, and Luis Pujols. Trammell's the worst.
I don't think Pujols deserves to be considered because he didn't manage a full year.
Right.
So really, he's out of it. How can you even consider him with Alan Trammell or Brad Ausmus? So I guess Trammell, sad but true, Trammell would be the worst manager that's managed since Sparky Anderson retired.
So then quickly, because I have another debate topic for you, and it's very interesting, because I would say Brad Ausmus could be looked at as a worse manager because in game,
you think so?
In game, he had totally lacks the ability to really recognize what's going on, and he struggles with making adjustments. In that, I do believe in game, I don't know if he started out liking the sabermetric idea and then kind of totally went like, you know what, I just want to go with my feel. Because when you look at the numbers, people, they're looking at Brad Ausmus going, he's not doing things according to sabermetrics. And if you're not going to do things by the numbers, it's going to really, a lot of people are believing that's the way to go in baseball. So we'll see how that shakes out. But real quickly, Al Avila has been talked about now in the crosshairs because of the team that he put out there and the big-time money that he allocated to a couple guys in Zimmerman and Upton. Now, Upton's kind of made a resurgence, but Zimmerman's been hurt, and Upton didn't have this resurgence until way into the season. And you could argue that maybe it was a talk with somebody outside the organization that turned it around. But quickly, because I have an interesting question for you before we end this podcast, but do you think Al Avila, when time shakes out, is going to trend toward being viewed more like Randy Smith or more like his protege, Dave Dombrowski? Because we all know Randy Smith and what he did to the Tigers. He was broomed out unceremoniously when Dave Dombrowski was hired here. I believe Dave Dombrowski was hired as the president. Then once he observed what Randy Smith was doing, he broomed himself out and said, okay, I'm the general manager now.
Yep.
Do you think Al Avila is going to shake out to be more like Dave Dombrowski or more like Randy Smith?
Well, if the Jordan Zimmerman move and the Jaron Saltalamacchia move mean anything to his tenure, which they do, well, then maybe he shakes out to be more like Randy Smith. Zimmerman, by the way, started against the Orioles in that game, too, where he got blown up. And that's on Al Avila, as well as I talked about in previous podcasts about him allowing Brad Ausmus to have that decision to start him. Well, before against the White Sox, where he was bombed on that Thursday afternoon, and then against the Orioles. So Zimmerman has kind of turned out to be a bad move, right? For Al Avila, you could say so. And Justin Upton, to a certain degree, for all the money that he's making, Upton is not worth it. Has not produced the on-base percentage that we thought he would, the WAR that we thought he would. But power-wise, home run numbers, RBI numbers, he has surpassed his totals from a year ago with the San Diego Padres. And he was an all-star in 2015 with the Padres. And he has more home runs this year, more RBIs than last year with the Pods, even though he had that horrible first half. You know, going into the All-Star break, J-Up was irrelevant. His brother was looking better than him for much of this season, BJ, who is now Melvin Upton. He had to change his name because he was so bad there for a while, BJ. And he became better than Justin this season for the majority of it. And J-Up has finally recaptured something. It's finally shown some of his true colors from years past. And it's good we've gotten this out of him, because without him and without JD Martinez, where would the Tigers be at this point? They would be far out of the wild card race. They would be 4, 5, 5, 6 games out of the wild card race, because they've kind of bailed out, well, Brad Ausmus's managing miscues at times too by hitting some big-time clutch home runs. That is J-Up and JD Martinez. So, you know what? I guess I'll go to bat for Al Avila a little bit, because Upton has turned out to be better than some people thought after his poor first half. But Zimmerman, after his great first half, hasn't been as high of quality in the second half. But that's been, remember, more because of injuries. So, you know what? To sum it up, Al Avila has made some bad decisions. Getting Mark Lowe, remember? Getting Jared Saltalamacchia to a certain extent. But overall-wise, getting a guy like Cameron Maybin almost washes all that out. And then even J-Up, because of what he's done in the second half, I would say Avila this season deserves a C+ or B- for what he's done. And that's still higher than what Randy Smith would have ever gotten as general manager of the Tigers.
One thing you'll say is that Al Avila definitely has a lot of experience. Yep. And then before we wrap up the podcast, so obviously we talked about bad Tigers managers. So let's talk about arguably the two best. You would probably say let's say in our era.
Yeah. What is your era, Doc? Can you age yourself a little bit? How late can you? Well, probably just Sparky, right?
I'm going to call myself a millennial. Why not? I still think
a millennial.
Like
when were you born?
I Snapchat a lot. I'm young at heart.
That makes you. So if you go on Snapchat, you're a millennial. My dad goes on Snapchat tomorrow. My mom does. Yeah. They're millennials.
I'm more of a millennial. I'm not really a hipster, because the clothes don't fit me and they never will. You know, those kind of the attire that hipsters wear. I'm not into that.
Time out. Are you saying millennials are hipsters? I mean, what am I? Am I?
No. I'm saying I'm not a hipster. So that's probably the next, classification.
Oh, class. Okay.
So then, so I consider myself to be a millennial.
Very good. Wow, we just found out something new here. Wow, the Doc is a millennial.
Yep,
So-called. Not really, guys. Anyways, go on, Doc.
So in our era, the two best managers would be Sparky Anderson or Jim Leland.
Yep.
One series, take it all. Who's a better manager, Jim Leland or Sparky Anderson?
How can I rightfully judge Sparky, though? I was born in 1993. He was done as skipper after 95, I think.
Well, how can you judge him? Big Red Machine.
Well, there you go.
Tigers.
You just told me the reasoning. That is probably would be my reasoning. He won how many World Series titles in both the NL and the AL? Guess what? Jim Leland never did it. But a guy that he coached under, Tony La Russa, did in 2006 when he beat the Tigers head-to-head in that 2006 World Series. So Leland, I gave him a lot of props for what he did in 2006, turning around the ship so quickly. Didn't he? After 2005, did anybody expect that to happen? Nobody did, and they didn't have the talent to really have that happen. So that's when a manager makes a big impact, even though I don't think a manager makes a big impact year in, year out, but can be the reason why you lose more often than why you win, as Ausmus has been. He's like example A now for Major League Baseball managers of today and yesterday. But to sum it all up, Leland or Sparky? Well, Sparky, he won more big games. And Leland failed miserably in World Series with the Tigers. How about in 06? Won 1 game, lost in 5 games. Lost 4 straight in the 2012 World Series. In 2013, the Tigers came up short when everybody thought it was inevitable they would reach the Fall Classic and win it all that year. Everybody thought 2013 was their season to win it all finally for the first time since 1984 when Sparky did it with the Bless You Boys. So Sparky did it with the Tigers. Jim Leland never did. So that's an easy answer for me. It's got to be Sparky, even without ever watching a game that Sparky managed with the Tigers.
But do you give credit to Jim Leland for what he did in 2006?
I said that.
Yeah, taking a team that really was on the verge of making a move with young talent, but maybe just needed that voice and that belief that they were not garbage, that they were a team that could compete if they just gave effort night in, night out. There were a lot of role players on that 2006 team, and then you had some guys that had obviously some supreme Major League Baseball talent, and you had an emerging Justin Verlander as a rookie. You had Pudge Rodriguez. You had Maglio Ordonez. So that 2006 team was a nice blend of youth and experience, and he was able to blend it and probably had one of the most quotable speeches in Detroit Tigers history when he said, "Hey, this shit stops here." After that terrible series early on in the year, and he said, that's not going to happen anymore. That used to happen here, and it stopped. And then I think they rode that emotion, and after that tirade, the Tigers took off and had a really great 2006 season. But I agree with you 100% that the best Tigers manager probably in history would be Sparky Anderson. Definitely marked by the 1984 World Series and the whole Bless You Boys era and things like that. So good stuff.
So you know what? The Tigers didn't win a division title in 06 either. Remember, back in the day with Sparky's teams, with the Reds, with the Tigers, he had to win division titles as well. So, Jim Leland did win, remember, 3 straight with the Tigers from 2011 to 2013. And that brings up a good trivia question for you today and for me. I'm going to date back to as far back as 2005 right now, Doc, to the AL Central Division winners. Can you do it with me? Say all the winners from 05 to this season. And we know this season, you better get this season. So I'm going to start with 05, though. And I'm going to go first. You can even fact-check me, because I didn't look this up beforehand today. So if you want to fact-check me for AL Central Division winners since 2005. So I'm going to go right now. Ready?
Okay.
05, White Sox. They won the World Series. 06 was not the Tigers. It was the Twins. 07, the Indians. The last time they won the division crown in the AL Central prior to this season. 08 was the White Sox. You can fact-check me on all this, like I said. I hope you do. 09 and 2010, I believe, was the Minnesota Twins.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And now 2011 and 2014, the Tigers. 2015, the Royals. And this year, the Indians. Did I get all that right?
100% right. You said 2005 was the White Sox.
Yep.
The 6 was the Twins. 7 was the Cleveland Indians. 2008 White Sox. 2009, 2010 Minnesota Twins. 11 to 14 Tigers. KC and Cleveland. You are hopefully correct, because I was fact-checking you as you were saying it.
Good.
But I believe you were right.
I did.
Good stuff.
So, now really quick, do you remember in 09, the Tigers almost won that division? Do you remember what happened in 09? How the Twins won their division?
Was that Rick Porcello? And
that was at Rick Porcello start at the
game?
Metrodome in that one-game playoff.
And they went to extra innings, and there was that crushing loss in extra innings.
Crushing blow. It was so close.
I watched that
Porcello
game.
pitched great. He was a rookie, remember?
Yeah.
And now he's a Cy Young candidate. Fast forward how many years to 2016, and he's a legit Cy Young candidate in the American League. A guy I know you've talked about wanting to have still in this year's rotation. But a guy that we do have. Here's another good way to seg into another discussion point here about Michael Fulmer and Gary Sanchez, the AL Rookie of the Year debate. I think it's pretty much been solidified for Michael Fulmer after his start against the Royals this past weekend. He has 5 WAR. Sanchez not nearly as much WAR over the course of the season because Sanchez hasn't played in. Well, look at how many games he's played in. So not enough to be Rookie of the Year for me. And Fulmer, he's had the great year all around, really. Outside of a few bad starts. Remember, he had that bad, how many start stretch before this past start against the Royals. But prior to that, Fulmer had been great all year long and deserves to be crowned AL Rookie of the Year at the end of the season.
So you're talking about who deserves it, but do you think the writers will vote Sanchez because it's the media out there?
That New York bias? And Sanchez has all those home runs this year, remember. But I think no. I think they really...
When it comes down...
they realize Fulmer deserves it, Doc. What do you think?
I think that it might hinge on his next start versus the Indians. If he goes down there and shuts them out and the Tigers are able to earn a playoff berth, it's not a bad look on your resume, that's for sure. If he goes out there and gets shelled by Cleveland, gives up 4 or 5 runs, I think that'll be a lasting impression and might sway towards Sanchez.
Now, It's time for the Buster of the Week and your toast of the town. Doc, you can go first as you're wearing Lions blue.
Buster of the Week is JD Martinez. After you lose to the Indians on Monday, you can't come out there and say that you hope that you're going to win based upon the fact that your opponent's going to be not into it as much. You can't say that. It's a weak comment. So he's my Buster of the Week. Even though he's been hitting and carrying his weight, carrying the team, that kind of comment is a little bit defeatist. I don't like it, and I think it's probably one of the rare comments. If you look back, he'll probably say, I probably shouldn't have said that. My toast of the town, that's going to be tough, this week, but I'm going to say it's going to be Daniel Norris. It's a guy that's kind of turned things around, has had, a couple more consistent starts than in the past, and I do believe this week he's going to have a key performance on Thursday afternoon, and I do believe that he's going to do some things going forward. So my toast to the town, get a chance to hang out with the Van Man, Daniel Norris.
You would like that, wouldn't you?
Me and the Van Man.
You would kind of be a hipster then, Doc. But now my Buster of the Week, it has to be, guess who? Matt Boyd. Did not record an
5
out.
batters.
How bad is that, Doc? You can't afford that to happen. I don't care if you're a youngster or not, as Matt Boyd is. You got to be better than that. You got to go, hey, give me 4 innings then. Give me 5. Can you muster that? He had to do that, didn't get it done on Sunday. The Tigers got shellacked by the Royals, 12-9, and lost the series subsequently when they shouldn't have at Comerica Park, Doc.
Yeah, I think he'll be a player that we're going to debate in the offseason regarding what his future is going to be, whether it be a starter or maybe he's more suited to be a middle relief or long relief guy, because he's up and down. He's had some great starts and not so good starts because inconsistency is the worst. How do you judge that? A guy that has stuff but needs to kind of, bring it game in and game out. So we're still searching for that consistency. But at this point in time, when you got Boyd, Norris, and, young guys, you throw in a Buck Farmer on a Monday in a must-win series, you bring
But
in
he
Buck,
was better than Matt Boyd.
Yeah.
That's why he doesn't deserve Buster of the Week.
But you bring in Buck Farmer, you kill the attendance. I don't care what your playoff situation is. You pitch Buck Farmer, you saw what happened. He's not box office. Nobody would even pay $15 to go see Buck Farmer. I wouldn't pay that. Buck Farmer up and down all year. I don't even want. It's time to let some pieces go.
The Buck should not stop ever again in Motown as a starter. Maybe in AAA Toledo. Hey, let's relegate him to that and let him start down there as much as he wants to. But Matt Boyd, you were discussing him really quick. I think he's worn out. It's his first full season in the bigs. He's just worn out at this juncture in the campaign. So we can't really get on him too much. And I think he is a full-time starter going forward, but a very effective one that can be a bona fide number 2 or 3. Probably not. Probably more of a number 4 or 5 at the back end of the rotation. Doc, with that, hey, thanks to Isis Damil for joining us. She had a great rendition, didn't she, of Take Me Out to the Ball Game. And we will play that actually once again at the end of this very episode of Tigers Talk. Next week is episode number 60. We have a big one in store for Tigers Talk. Aaron McMahon will be back. We have another guy or 2 or 3. Hey, a lot of guys will be joining us, I believe, for next week's edition of Tigers Talk, Doc.
Hopefully, you do a great show, and hopefully much success for you. And the podcast has been going great. I enjoy the hour talking baseball with you. You bring a lot of youth and energy, and it's always a great hour talking Detroit Tigers baseball. So let's do it. Prediction. Next podcast, Tigers playing in a wild card game, or are we talking about Alavila, who might be letting go of Brad Ausmus?
We're talking about the Blue Jays and O's playing in the AL wild card game, and the Tigers, that means
Sitting home,
going golfing. Correct. But not firing Brad Ausmus because Alavila is inept. How many guys did I call it out? Look at that. I just called him out, and I actually like Alavila. So sorry, the Tigers and Alavila, because I actually do respect you. Now, Brad Ausmus, the truth is, I really don't respect him. So, as I said before, I hope he doesn't come back. But I think, Doc, he will, even though the Tigers, I project to miss out on the playoffs.
All right, let's get the hell out of here, man. Good stuff.
All right, Doc. Sayonara, and enjoy the rest of this Tigers regular season, guys. Goodbye.
Take me out to the bar.